Hello and welcome to the webinar, Many Ways to Defeat Multi-Factor Authentication. My name is Lindsay Smith with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then we'll dig into our presentation. First, we would like to thank KnowBe4 for their partnership with today's event. They've been wonderful thought leadership partners to Argyle and are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. So thank you again to KnowBe4. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, please follow us on Twitter at Argyle Exec Forum. I also want to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we've curated based on the feedback we received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We've worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, please submit all questions that come up during today's event into the chat section of the interface. Before we begin our session, I'd like to introduce our speakers, and then we'll begin our presentation. Today, our speakers are Roger A. Grimes, Data-Driven Defense Evangelist, KnowBe4, and Kevin Mitnick, Chief Hacking Officer with KnowBe4 as well. Welcome, Roger and Kevin. Over to you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining me. Roger Grimes. I'm the Data-Driven Defense Evangelist for KnowBe4, and thanks for joining me for the 12 Ways to Defeat Multi-Factor Authentication. And although it says 12 ways, I think I have like 15 or 18 ways in this presentation. It's just grown over time, but we've got a lot of slides to get through and under an hour to get through it, so I'm going to get going, and I'll try to cover as many of the ways as I can. I may skip over one or two here or there, but just know I'm going to certainly cover the most exciting ones for you today. And to start with, I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness training vendor. And I love working for them. My name is Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for about 30 years. I've earned all these gray hairs and all my fatness, if you could see it. I've been doing all kinds of computer security consulting for over those 30 years. I've specialized in PKI and smart cards and MFA and biometrics. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you today is not just something that I read in an article and recounting to you. It's stuff that I lived. I've actually been paid to hack multi-factor authentication many times in my life. I've also written 10 books on computer security and over 1,000 magazine articles. I've been the InfoWorld and CSO Weekly security columnist since 2005. So if you hate that guy, I'm that guy. Here's some of my books, and the latest one is a Data-Driven Computer Security Defense. But that book doesn't have anything particular in hacking MFA. But a lot of people ask, what does my title mean? I'm a Data-Driven Defense Evangelist for KnowBe4. What does it mean? Well, besides it's just a made-up title that I made for myself when I got hired, it means that I like to use data to drive risk analytics. I want to help companies put the right defenses in the right places and the right amounts against the right threats. That's what a data-driven defense evangelist does. But today, I'm just going to be talking about multi-factor authentication. Hopefully, I'm going to give you a better insight into how multi-factor authentication really works behind the scenes, all the different ways that you can hack it, and what you can do to defend against those attacks. That's what I hope to accomplish today. So we're going to start the talk by looking at how multi-factor authentication works behind the scenes. If you've heard of these factors before, the classical factors is something you know, like a password pen, or maybe you're connecting the dots on the screen, so that's something that's coming out of your brain, something you have, which could be a USB token, a smart card, a RFID transmitter. It could be your cell phone. It could be some special dongle that you have, or something that you are. So biometrics, fingerprints, retina scan, smell. I once actually worked on a U.S. Army project that was going to authenticate people based upon how they smelled. I could have told them that it was going to fail because people smell a lot different each day, especially after they've been drinking all night or eating lots of garlic. Anyways, that didn't work so well. It wasn't so accurate. But those are the three traditional factors. You'll even hear some other factors today. Sometimes people talk about like behavioral analytics, your location, like an email system, and go, hey, you were picking up email 10 minutes ago in America, and now all of a sudden you're picking it up in China, and then all of a sudden you're picking it up in Russia, and it will warn you or it will show you where you last logged in. Or a lot of times it's analyzing your behavior. A lot of people don't know this, but when you log into many of the major email providers like for Microsoft and Google, they're actually looking at how long you take to type in your password, how long you're taking between different letters in your password. They're actually looking at well over 100, sometimes around 200 or 300 different behavioral characteristics of your login to determine are you who you say you are, or are you coming from a previously registered device. So traditionally we only have 3 factors. Something you know, something you have, something you are, but we're starting to see more factors come into it, but they're the kind of newer, more modern factors. And then we classify the authentication that uses one or more of those factors as single factor, 2-factor, multi-factor, although multi-factor is both 2 and 3-factor. Sometimes you'll even hear people say that, hey, we've got 5-factor, 7-factor, or something like that, because they're using either multiple types of the same factor, like they're saying we want you to enter in a PIN and a password and use a smart card, or they're putting in some of those newer factors like device and location and things like that. But the thing to remember is in order for these factors to be the most protective, you want to have as many different types of factors, meaning that if someone was to say it's 2-factor and they're having you type in 2 things that something like a password and a PIN or connect the dots, that's not as protective, all other things considered equally, if you were having someone, if you were putting in something and something you have and or something you are. The idea is that the more different types of factors that you have, the harder it is going to be for a hacker or attacker to steal those factors or mimic those factors or get around those factors. So more factors are better usually, and you want to have different types of factors for them to be the most protective. Although, if you have a 5-factor solution, that's typically going to be more protective than, let's say, a 2-factor solution, all other things considered equally. But again, you'd like to see different types of factors to get the most benefit from those protective authentication factors. So remember that 2 or more of the same factor is not as strong as different types of factors. Also, authentication factors can be in-band and out-of-band. In-band means that you're being asked to validate your authentication through the same communications channel as you're communicating to log in, such as you're logged into a web screen and it's asking you for your login name and password, and maybe it's asking you for a PIN or something like that. Out-of-band authentication is when they send you that authentication factor off a different communications channel. So they're sending you some type of PIN code to your cell phone, or they're sending you some type of one-time password numbers to a dongle that you're holding. And all things considered equal, the more factors that you have that are out of band from each other, the better protective-wise. Also know that authentication factors can be one-way or two-way. One-way means that either the client's authenticating itself to the client's authenticating itself to the server, or the server's authenticating itself to the client. Two-way means that both the client and the server have to authenticate to each other successfully before they have a single authenticated channel. By far, one-way authentication rules on the internet today. Like when you connect to some type of website that's doing TLS, over HTTPS, that server is usually providing a digital certificate to you that proves its identity to you, the client. Although if you're then logging into a banking website, maybe that's for your login name and password, then you're doing a one-way authentication to that bank. All things considered equally, if you have a two-way mutual authentication, that is stronger than a one-way authentication, or even two one-way authentications, but they're not nearly as common, especially on the internet, because it requires that you have stronger authentication. It requires that you pre-register between the different things, and it just doesn't work in between. It doesn't work well with proxies and firewalls and load balancers and things like that. For all those reasons, one-way authentication is by far the most common type of authentication out there. But if you want to beat some of these hacks that I talk about today, using some solution that has a two-way mutual authentication can defeat some of these attacks. Before I go into talking about all the different ways to hack multi-factor authentication. Some people, when I get through this talk, literally are like, oh my God, I didn't realize how horrible, two-factor authentication was. Two-factor authentication isn't necessarily horrible. I mean, all things considered equally, multi-factor authentication is usually better than single-factor authentication. And you need to remember this. We should strive to use multi-factor authentication wherever and whenever it makes sense. I mean, it doesn't always make sense to use multi-factor. Maybe you're just logging into Google or something like that, or not even Google. You're just doing a search engine result, or you're looking at a public document on somebody's website. You don't want to have to multi-factor authenticate to look at some public document. But where it makes sense, where you're trying to protect confidential information, where you would normally put a login name and password, it usually then makes sense that you should use some type of multi-factor authentication. But what this talk is about today is that multi-factor authentication isn't unhackable. That's all we're trying to say, is that it's a good thing to have, it's a good thing to use, but you can hack any multi-factor authentication method. But before we talk about hacking, I want to teach you all some basic concepts to better understand MFA. Typically, authentication is 3 different distinct processes, sometimes 4 distinct processes. But the first thing is that you or the device that you're using has to provide some type of unique identifier that's attached to an identity inside within a common namespace. By that I mean that, if DNS is your namespace, then you have to have a unique email address across all of DNS or across all of the internet. If you're in Windows Active Directory, it requires that you have a unique login name for every Active Directory force that you could possibly be in, or within the same force, that is. So you always have to provide this identity, and it could be a login name, it could be an email address, it could be a public digital certificate or something like that, but it's attached to some type of identifier or identity that's unique within that common namespace. And then you submit that identity or identifier that's attached to the identity, you then provide one or more factors that prove that you have sole ownership of that identifier or identity, and then if you successfully provide those factors and you successfully get authenticated, it means, hey, you've been authenticated. And then after that, you typically, and this is important here, if you're falling asleep already, pay attention here, typically after you successfully authenticate, you get this thing called an access control token or access token that essentially says you've been authenticated. Now here's your identity or identity identifier. Sometimes it can have other information in there like group memberships or permissions or privileges that every time you go to access a protected resource, this access control process will ask you to submit your access token that determines you are who you say you are and that you're authenticated, and then it will determine whether or not you're allowed or not allowed to access a particular protected resource. That's called the process of authorization. So you provide an identity label, you authenticate that you're the sole owner of that identity, and then you get an access control token that you then use in future authorization processes with an access control token to an access control process. But here's the huge point to understand. I would say that 99.9% of the people listening to this webinar today don't understand this. Heck, 99.9% of the people that are like me don't understand this. So pay attention to this, is that no matter how you authenticate, whether it's 1-factor, 2-factor, biometrics, smell, whatever, no matter how you authenticate, once you successfully authenticate, you're then usually by that underlying operating system or website given the same access control token, and after you've been authenticated, that authorization process doesn't care how you authenticated, it treats you the same. And by that I mean, is like, suppose you have a Microsoft Windows laptop, and I don't care how you authenticate to that laptop or to Active Directory, whether it's a login name and password, whether it's biometrics, whether it's a smart card, whatever. After you have successfully authenticated, everybody is going to get the same resulting access control token, whether it's in a LAN manager ticket, an NTLM token, or a Kerberos ticket. So whether or not you log in with a login name and password or biometrics on Windows laptop, the resulting thing that's now on that system that's being tracked to your identity is the same access control token. It's an NTLM token or a Kerberos ticket regardless of how you authenticate it. Or if I authenticate or you authenticate to a website, no matter how you authenticated that website, whether it was a FIDO, 2FA token or login name and password or biometrics or whatever, you're typically going to get an access control token that is a text-based cookie called a session token. And that session token typically just has some unique identifier inside of it that tracks that you are who you say you are. And why this is important is that once you have successfully authenticated, no matter how you authenticate, if a bad guy can steal your resulting access control token, they are you. For all intents and purposes, those underlying systems don't care how you authenticated and don't know that the person that has your access control token isn't you. Very important points. Now we're going to walk in and go into hacking MFA. Know that there's lots of different ways to hack MFA. You can do it using social engineering, a technical attack against underlying technology. Physically, you can always steal or copy something like copying a fingerprint. Or a lot of attacks are a combination of two or all methods. Most of the time, there's some type of insecure transitioning between the different link steps of the identity and authentication and authorization, and then the hackers using social engineering, a technical attack, or physical to exploit the differences or the weaknesses between those different steps. Some MFA solutions are better than others, but there's no such thing as an unhackable solution. We're going to start with the most common type of multi-factor authentication hacking that I've been seeing ever since the late 1990s, and that's session hijacking. And that's the idea is that the hacker doesn't care how you authenticate, they're just going to hijack your session. They can do that a lot of different ways, but the way that I want to concentrate on today is that where they hijack your network session by stealing your resulting access control token. So the attacker has to implement a man-in-the-middle attack so that they're inserting themselves and their tools in between the client and the server. Then the client authenticates to the legitimate server the way that the way that they've always done, or the way that they were required to be done, like two-factor. And then the server doesn't know that there's a man-in-the-middle attack going on. It issues the resulting successful access control token, which the bad guy steals and reuses, taking over the user's session. So again, we're going to go through one of the most common ones that we're going to have, or actually Kevin Mitnick in a minute is going to demonstrate this attack. It's really neat to see. I think almost anyone that sees this attack for the first time is really quite impressed with how easy it is to pull off. But Kevin is going to convince somebody to visit a rogue name-alike website that looks like the real website. But what Kevin has really done is created a man-in-the-middle attack where the client is communicating with him, with Kevin and Kevin's tools, which Kevin then proxies onto the real website. The real website prompts the users to input their multi-factor authentication credentials, which the user does, and the bad guy relays to the real website. The real website then sends the legitimate user the resulting access control token, which the bad guy then steals and takes over the user's account. It's a really cool attack. I've got a link here in the slides where you can watch it later on yourself. But for right now, let's watch Kevin do it. Video is about 6 minutes long and worth every second.
Kevin Mitnick, KnowBe4's Chief Hacking Officer. And a lot of people ask me if they enable two-factor authentication on the websites that they use, does that stop phishing attacks? And let's take a look at that. So what exactly is two-factor authentication? That's when you log into a website, for example, and not only do you have to put in your username and password, but the website actually sends you a code via SMS, or you might have an application on your mobile device that displays a code that you have to enter into the website to log in. And that is proving that you actually have your mobile device. So it's a form of authentication that's based on something that you have, and your password is something that you know. So a good friend of mine developed this demo, Kuba Gretzky, that demonstrates how a bad guy could phish you even though you've enabled two-factor authentication. So let's take a look at how this works. So I'm logged into my Gmail account, and if you take a look in the second email here, I'll go ahead and open it. it appears to be an email from LinkedIn. And ordinarily, when somebody wants to join your network on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will actually send an email to your email address notifying you of that. And if you're interested, you can go ahead and click Interested, log into your LinkedIn account, and authorize that person to actually become a connection. So if we take a look here, we have an email from LinkedIn that says, Kevin, I've read about your adventures in Ghost in the Wires and so on, and this person wants to join my network. But this is actually a phishing attack. If we take a look here at where the email is originating from, it's not at linkedin.com, it's at this domain called llnked.com, which people might overlook. So let's go ahead and pretend that we're the victim here and go ahead and click on Interested. And what that is going to do, it's going to redirect us to the LinkedIn website to go ahead and log in. But let's move this over to the right and let that load. And if you take a look over here, we have a blank white page, which is going to become very important in a moment. And this is the attacker terminal session. So let's go ahead and bring back the virtual machine that's now connected to LinkedIn to authenticate, because we, again, clicked on Interested in the email. So we'll go ahead and put in a username, Johnny Boy at mitnicksecurity.com. And now we're going to go ahead and put in our secret password. And then we're going to go ahead and click Sign In. And when we click Sign In, it's not going to allow us to log in. What LinkedIn is going to do is request our two-factor authentication code that LinkedIn is going to actually send to my mobile phone. And in a moment, you should hear a sound that the text message was received on my mobile phone. So let's go ahead and click Sign In. And here we go. It's telling us that two-step authentication is enabled. We just heard a message come into my mobile device. We're going to uncheck this box that says recognize this device in the future. And I'm going to open my mobile device to take a look and see what the text message is, or what the code is, rather. So the code here is 421476. We're going to go ahead and click Verify. And when we do so, it's going to log us into my LinkedIn account. So now we're logged into the LinkedIn account, but let's take a look at the attacker session over here on the left. So we're going to scoot this over to the right. And over here, what we have is what we're able to intercept. So we're able to intercept the email address, which is johnnyboy@mitnicksecurity.com. We're also able to intercept the password to the account, which is KnowBeforeRocks. And over here, this is not the actual 6-digit code that was intercepted, because you can't really use the 6-digit code again, the second factor. But what we're able to do is intercept the session cookie. And if you're able to steal the session cookie, or if rather the attacker is able to do so, they don't even need your username or password or second factor code. They could simply load the session key into a browser and they actually become you. So let me show you how this works. We're going to highlight the cookie. We're going to copy it to the clipboard, and then we're simply going to open up Chrome in incognito mode. And incognito mode just means with privacy. So now we're going to go to the real LinkedIn website. When we go here, obviously we're not authenticated. Now it's, wants us to log in with our credentials, but we don't have to do so. We're going to go ahead and go into Developer Tools. We're going to go into the console, and what we're going to paste into the console is the session cookie that we stole from the victim, which was myself, by the way. I'm going to enter it. I'm going to go ahead and close the session. Now, all I simply have to do to be logged into the victim's account with their session cookie is simply hit refresh now. So I hit refresh, and here we are. We've logged in, or rather hacked, my own account. So, will two-factor authentication actually stop phishing attacks? Well, you can see that the answer is simply no. So what do you need to do to protect your organization? Well, of course, you need to have user education and training. That's a no-brainer. But you also have to conduct simulated phishing attacks, so you can inoculate your users against this type of risk. And more importantly, You have to stop, you have to look and think before you click that link.
So that was pretty amazing, huh? I mean, basically, Kevin just sent a simple, normal phishing email. The user clicked on it, logged into what they thought was their account, and he bypassed the 2FA. He didn't really bypass it per se. He just stole the resulting access control token. Bypassing the 2FA. Again, didn't care how you logged in. Could have been using biometrics, and it wouldn't have. He just stole the resulting access control token. If you're interested in how Kevin did this particular demo, he used a tool called Evil Jinx. That's a tool that you've been able to do these bypasses for, I think, at least 6 or 8 years or something like that. But I've been seeing these network session hijackings go on since at least the late 1990s. They've been around forever. It's been used, hundreds and tens of thousands of times to get past people. They're very popular, especially if you're a cryptocurrency guy. This is a real-life reposting of some guy that had his cryptocurrencies stolen. He called it an elaborate phishing scam. Basically, he just got an email that took him to a fake Binance website that stole his login credentials, and then it said that the fake site requested 2FA via Google Authenticator, so he's using Google Authenticator, and then was able to, within a 60-second timeout, take away his access control token, and then they logged in and logged him out. It's been done many, many times around the world. Back in 2018, it was possibly done against tens of thousands of accounts by these Iranian phishers that got by people's Yahoo Mail and Gmail, and it can get by LinkedIn. It can bypass just about anything. It's a very common way, network session hijacking, so pretty neat. Another way, this is a new way, it's called man in the endpoint. Instead of being man in the middle, it's man in the endpoint. And basically, if the bad guy or malware is on your endpoint, on your computer, on your device, they can bypass any MFA that you have. They can do anything that you would otherwise do after successful authentication. They can start a second hidden browser session and steal money. They can steal your session cookies. They can insert backdoors and so on and so on. So this is an example of what's called a Bankos Trojan. They've been around since the late 1990s, and basically it was malware that breaks into your computer, and then it listens for you to, it actually monitors your browser activity and waits till you go to a particular bank. They usually have 100 to 150 bank names built into them, so like maybe you say Bank of America, and then you log into Bank of America, or whatever your bank is, any way you want to, whether it's a login name and password, whether it's a two-factor authentication, whether you're using SMS messaging, they don't care. They just wait till you successfully log in, and after you successfully log in, they then create a second hidden browser session and transfer all of your money or most of your money to their bank, to some unknown Chinese or Russian bank account that you have no association with. You don't know what's going on. You think you're just checking your bank balance, or maybe you're transferring money, $100 to a kid, but behind the scenes, unbeknownst to you, your device is transferring your entire bank account and closing it out. They're even going to intercept the emails that are sent to you from your bank trying to say, hey, are you sure you want to close out your account? And it's all done, invisibly while you sit there. And the bank doesn't know that it's not you, because it's just, essentially keystrokes that are coming from your device, and you just successfully authenticated. Again, the first time I saw this type of endpoint attack was in the late 1990s. They've been done, hundreds of thousands of times. This is Bankos Trojans, or banking Trojans, have been around and been used, for decades. And here's another example of a real-life attack where it was actually done on a cell phone. All they did was move it from the PC to the cell phone. In this case, it said if the user installed a fake PayPal app, that whenever the end user went to PayPal, it would log in and it would mimic the user's clicks to send money to the attacker's PayPal address. Of course, all completely unknown to the end user. So those old attacks are just new and working on new platforms. Here's an interesting attack. Now this, out of all the hacks that I'm going to show you today, this is the only one that I don't think has been done in the public realm yet, not that I know of, but it's called a subject hijack. Remember at the beginning of this talk I said that all multi-factor authentication, all authentication is tied to a unique login identity, for that login. It has to be unique within the namespace. Well, attackers can actually, if they can steal the name or the identity label that's attached to that multi-factor authentication device, they can actually hijack it and steal its rights and permissions. Now I'm going to show you a specific type of attack, and this is going to be one that's an example of a Microsoft Smart Card identity hack, but it's just to show you one type of hack. And in this case, a low privilege help desk user is going to steal a super admin's permissions and privileges by taking their name, their identity label, placing it on the super admin's account, and then when they log in with their name and their smart card and their PIN, so the help desk guy is going to log in with his help desk credentials, his help desk smart card, because he placed his user principal name, that's the user, and it looks like an email address, on the super admin's account, he will become the super admin, be able to do anything malicious they want to, and the entire system would track everything they do as if he was the super admin. All event logging, everything would be done as if it was the super admin, not the help desk. And then when he was finished, he could get back out, switch the UPNs back, and nobody would know the difference. So the question to ask yourself after you see this video, this demo that I created is, does your log management system track an alert on user principal name updates if you have Microsoft Active Directory? So here's this cool little video to watch.
This is going to be a demonstration of subject hijack and smart card logons using two different users. The first user I have is a super admin user that is the member of all kinds of special cool groups like domain admins, enterprise admins, and schema admins, and has the UPN of super admin at victim.com, naturally. And then the other user that's going to kind of be the hacker, the user that tries to steal the privileges from super admin, is the help desk user with the UPN of help desk, and has membership in no special groups, just a member of domain users. What you can't see here is I've also delegated full control permissions to all the users in the users folder, which is something that a help desk admin might likely have, to be able to reset UPNs when people get married and divorced, or change their email address, or maybe they want to reset passwords or change company information and what department a person is in, something like that, something very standard. And so with this subject hijack, the help desk user is going to hijack the super admin's user permissions and privileges by placing his UPN on the super admin's account. So now we're going to switch to a Windows 10 client. I'm going to log in as the super admin using the super admin smart card. Wait a few seconds as it logs on in. When I show you that I'm logged in as super admin for sure, do who am I? I'm super admin on the victim.com domain. Show what groups I have, what group memberships I have, and they're going to be a bunch of cool special groups, including, you'll see here, enterprise domain admins, enterprise admin, and schema admin. Also want to look at the certificates. The certificate that we use to log on in is this super admin certificate. It says it's issued to the super admin by the victim.com CA. Again, if we want to go make sure it's got the right UPN in it, we will. We'll go down to subject alternative name. You'll see it's superadmin at victim.com. And just remember this thumbprint. That'll kind of come in handy later. Is that the thumbprint of this certificate is, at least the beginning 2 octets, is 55FA. 55FA. Remember that. So now I'm going to delete these just to make sure they're not still cached around for the next user. And I'm even going to reboot the machine because, again, I want to make sure that I'm logging in and not using cache credentials. I'm not going to do a cheat. Now I'm logging in as the help desk user. Got to change my username. Help desk user, different sign-in option. Here we go. We got help desk at victim.com, smart card login, put my PIN. Just like I did with user admin, or just like I did with super admin, I'm going to show you that I'm currently logged in as help desk. Who am I as help desk? Show you what groups I belong to. No special groups. Going to show you the certificates that I belong, what certificate I logged in with. Certificate I logged in with is help desk. Details here show you the UPN. It's under the subject alternative name. It says I'm helpdesk at victim.com. And remember this unique thumbprint. So you can remember last time the thumbprint for super admin was 55FA for the first 2 octets. The first 2 octets for the help desk admin is E9AE. Remember that, E9AE. So we're in as help desk user at the victim.com domain. I'm going to start up Active Directory users and computers, and what I'm going to do is give the schema admin the help desk UPN. Although in order to do that, I have to change the UPN of the help desk account to anything else. It can be anything. It can be Frog, anything, because Active Directory will not allow 2 user accounts in the same forest to share the same UPN. So in order for me to give the help desk UPN to the super admin user, I have to change it to anything else. Then I go into the super admin account, change its UPN to help desk, save that, make sure it's still saved in there. So the UPN is help desk. I close that out, and again I'm as the help desk user. I'm going to sign out. I sign back in. Again, I'm at help desk, sign in account. And wait a couple of seconds. Notice it now it's saying welcome super admin. That's kind of different. And now if I go to a who am I, it says I'm super admin. And what groups do I have? Well, I have all those special groups: domain admin, enterprise admin, and schema admin. I am now the help desk user in as super admin. And again, if I go look at the certificates here, the only certificate we see is the help desk certificate with the thumbprint of E9AE, not like the super admin, which had 55FA. So pretty cool. All we did was switch the UPN and Active Directory of the super admin from super admin to help desk, and then when I successfully logged in as the help desk smart card and help desk pin, when it went to map it to Active Directory, it went, oh, the super admin user has help desk at victim.com, and gave me all the permissions, privileges, and group memberships of super admin. That's pretty cool.
So that was interesting. A lot of people may say, well, he was already an end user and he had some permissions and privileges. That's true, but that was just one type of attack, a privilege escalation exploit. What I want you to realize is that anytime you can manipulate the subject in the underlying name system, you can start to manipulate the resulting connected smart card or multi-factor authentication. You need to realize that any critical attribute like the subject or the user principal name that's involved with authentication can be abused, and you need to review and make sure that least privileged permissions are given to those sorts of critical attributes. Like, we're always told to protect passwords and password hashes, and let's minimize who has that, and let's alert if someone tries to dump the password hashes, that's alert. But let me ask yourself, does your event logging system alert you when someone's made a UPN change? I would probably say for everybody in the audience today, probably not. So you just want to be aware that anything that's inside of a multi-factor authentication token, like subject name, can be used to do some sort of hack, and you want to audit and alert on any critical attribute changes. So that's kind of neat. But let's pop over to something else. This one is far more popular. It's one of the most popular types of multi-factor authentication hacks that there is, and it's called SIM swapping. SIM stands for Subscriber Identity Module, and every cell phone has one of these. Either it's physically contained on some little micro SD card, or it's a virtual SIM, and it has information on it that kind of tells your phone that your phone is your phone. It connects your phone to the cell phone provider's network, like AT&T or Verizon or whatever. It has your phone number and other device ID information. And if you move that SD card or the information that's on the SIM card to another phone, that other phone can become your phone. So, we've all done that when we've got upgraded cell phones, or we lost our cell phone, or we had to get a replacement cell phone that the vendor said, hey, you need to take the card out of the old phone and put it in the new phone, or you have to call and activate your phone so that you can get the correct SIM information so your phone will be your phone. And essentially the SIM information allows your phone to be your phone and accept and receive phone calls to your phone number and SMS, short messaging service messages, to your phone. And very, very common SMS-based MFA is very commonly used by vendors today. It's one of the most common things on the Internet. If there's a two-factor authentication method on the Internet by one of your banks or providers, probably a 90% chance it's going to be SMS-based. They send you the messages. Like I think examples, Marriott is sending me messages, two-factor authentication messages to my cell phone. I've got Bank of America sending me messages here. I've got Microsoft and Office 360 sending me messages. I got Facebook sending me messages. I could have Gmail sending me messages. Although my favorite is that I'm being sent an SMS message from my ID experts, My ID Care. That was sent to me. That's a service that was given to me for free for 2 years because my biometric identity was compromised back in 2015, along with 5.6 million other people's fingerprints. The Chinese Advanced Persistent Threat stole everybody's fingerprints from the Office Ombudsman, and they gave us this free service that's supposed to protect our identity. But what it's using to protect my identity is a multi-factor authentication method, which the U.S. government says not to use. So it turns out that hackers for many, many years have been tricking cell phone vendors and technical support people into transferring the SIM information to their malicious cell phone. And so once that happens, your cell phone stops working. And typically they had to get some information from you to begin this hack. They usually have phished you, and they've got in like a login name and a password or a PIN that belongs to your cell phone account and vendor. And then they call the cell phone network. They claim they lost their phone or got damaged or something like that. The technical support person transfers the SIM information to the new phone. You don't know that it's occurred. All that happens is your cell phone stops working, and all you know is you're not getting any calls or SMS messages, and maybe you don't notice for a while or for a couple hours. And then once you do learn, it could take you up to a day to get your phone turned back on. I mean, heck, you don't even have your phone working to be able to call your cell phone provider to tell them it's not working. Well, malicious SIM swaps have happened tens of thousands of times. People have lost hundreds of millions of dollars, especially cryptocurrency people, so much so that the U.S. government and from the National Institute of Standards and Technologies and their special publication called 800-63, or it's known as the Digital Identity Guidelines, says that the government will not accept SMS codes as valid authentication because of how easy it is to hack. Yet I just told you like 90% of all multi-factor authentication on the Internet, including the government's own multi-factor authentication, is often SMS-based codes. It's just crazy. And it has been used in some of the world's SIM swap attacks, have been used in many of the world's biggest attacks. Cryptocurrency guys are always getting their cryptocurrency wallets stolen. They've been told, oh, use two-factor, that'll protect you. But, they didn't know that a simple SIM swap would turn their phone into somebody else's phone, and they would get the wallet PIN code to unlock the wallet, and they'd still steal the information. This one group of teenage SIM swap attackers stole hundreds of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency, including they stole $24 million from one guy. That one guy is now suing AT&T for $124 million. The hackers actually had an inside technical support guy that I think they paid $75. They gave him $75 every time he did a SIM swap for them. I think he was really he should be really be mad because he got fired and he's going to jail and he only made $75 a SIM swap. But this is a very, very popular attack. So popular, the U.S. government says don't use it. Sadly, or don't use this type of 2FA. Sadly, you'll have a hard time doing your work, your business across the internet without having to accept SIM or SMS sent-based codes. So how do you defend against this? Well, try not to use. If you don't have to use an SMS-based application for your two-factor authentication, don't use it. The SMS app will travel with your phone number, and your phone number will travel with your SIM information module stuff. So what you want to do instead is use like a non-SMS based application that's on your cell phone or something that's off your cell phone. We can hack those too, but it's a little bit harder than the SIM swapping attacks. This one here is a SIM, kind of a SIM attack, an SMS attack. It's called the SMS Rogue Recovery Hack. All I need to know is your telephone number and a service that you belong to. And the problem is that with an SMS message, there's no way to know when the message comes to you that it really is from the person who it purports to be from. Anyone can claim to be anyone. Again, all the hacker has to have is your email address to a service that has an SMS-based recovery method and your phone number. This is the way that it goes. The hacker sends you a text message pretending to be from your email provider asking for a forthcoming SMS PIN reset code. Here's an example. From Google Security, and this is not from Google Security, but it pretends to be from Google Security. We've detected a rogue sign-on to your good guy at Gmail account, and in order to determine the legitimate login, we're going to send a verification code to your previously registered phone number from another Google support number. Please retype the sent verification code in response to this message, or your account will be permanently blocked. Permanently blocked really scares people. Then the attacker goes to your email provider and forces it into SMS PIN recovery mode. In this example, they're going to Google. They put in your email address for Gmail, and instead of putting in your password, they click on forgot the password. Then Google will go, oh, try to put in your last password. No, I don't know. Let's try another way. And Google will allow you to choose among like 5 or 6 different ways. It's pretty cool. And they'll try to use something besides SMS recovery because Google knows SMS recovery is such a bad method to use. But the hacker, pretending to be you on your recovery mode instance, actually says, no, I want you to send me this recovery code to my previously registered phone number. Here, send me a text via SMS, and they click on that in your Gmail account. You'll then get the legitimate, this is a legitimate message really from Google. Your Google verification code is blah. You've been told to type it in response to the other message. You type it in there. The hacker then takes that reset recovery code message, types it in response to the browser, and boom, they own your account, right? The thing to remember about these SMS rogue recoveries is that anytime any vendor's ever sent you an SMS recovery PIN message, they never ask you to type it back in response back into the cell phone, back into the SMS message. They ask you to type in that PIN message at a band back into the internet browser that you're looking at. But if you don't know about this type of attack, you might be able to be tricked into using it. So remember, if you're not aware of these rogue recovery messages and hacking methods, you might get fooled. But now that you know, you know. Anytime you get sent a reset code, you always type it back into a browser, not in response back into the phone. And remember I talked about these hackers being able to socially engineer tech support. These cell phone vendors have been told, hey, we want you to avoid, they've got policies and procedures and tools that try to avoid accidentally doing SIM swaps and things like that to the wrong person. But hackers like to use stressor events to cause that tech support person to bypass those controls. You know, they're just humans and they want to help. I don't have time to play this video, but I encourage you to go watch this video. It's a pretty cool example of this. This is a female hacker at one of the computer tradecraft shows, RSA or Black Hat or something like that. And a reporter is interviewing her, trying to see if she can socially engineer his cell phone provider's tech support into giving up his account information. And she does, in 2 minutes. She has everything. She basically starts 2 YouTube videos of babies crying. So babies are wah, wah, wah. And she calls up tech support. She goes, "Hi, I was supposed to switch this account information, but it wasn't working when I was trying to do it." And she's like, and she starts to go, "Honey, I'm trying to get it. So she's acting like the husband's yelling at her and that these babies are crying. And what does the tech support person do? They reset all of her account information. They give her complete control of the account. The female hacker even says, "Oh, my daughter's going to college today. Can I get her a new phone?" And the tech support person helps her set up a new phone and new account information. It's an incredible thing to watch. I encourage you to watch it and see how easy it is. And the thing I love is that the reporter's mouth, he's just stunned. He's just stunned at how easy she did it. Here's another type of attack that's more on the technical end. And this is any of these types of one-time passwords, especially time-based one-time passwords. These are the devices like RSA Secure IDs or your Google Authenticator account, where they give you this what looks like a random code, and it's every 30 seconds or a minute or every 10 minutes or whatever, you get this new number and you got to type in that randomly generated code into the screen to authenticate yourself. So usually you're going to put in like a login name and then this one-time password. Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that the way that these one-time passwords are generated is that the vendor has an algorithm that many times is well known, but they also have your device ID and what's called a random seed value. They have a randomly generated seed value that's stored in the database along with your device ID that is used to kick off the whole process to generate these one-time passwords in the future. And if an attacker can find that database, so if they can find the database that has your device ID and that random seed value, they then can create a virtual instance, another virtual instance of your device or app that kicks off the exact same numbers like you would see. So there's always going to be these shared secrets in at least 2 places, on your device or application and back on the vendor that supplies that device or software. It could be in your employer's network. Somewhere there's got to be that shared secret, that seed value in your device ID. And if an attacker can find that, they can then create virtual instances of those applications or devices. And there's a real-life example of when this happened. The Chinese APT attacked RSA a few years ago. They were in RSA like 8 months, and they were able to compromise lots of different of these seed databases of different companies, including Lockheed Martin, and then they broke into Lockheed Martin by using, by creating virtual instances of these login devices, RSA Secure IDs, and broke into Lockheed Martin and stole a bunch of military secrets. So it's been done in real life. Heck, back in the late 1990s and early 2000s, I used to use this tool from Canonable. It's a free hacking tool. You can still download it today from, if you go to www.oxid.it, you can download this tool. It's really old, hasn't been updated in a while. But it's a pretty cool tool to play with if you're into pen testing. But even back then, back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, it had an RSA key secure ID generator at the time when it was an older algorithm, but I remember using it. You just had to put in the serial number of the RSA Secure ID device that you're using, that shared secret seed value, and then you put in whatever time and date you wanted, and it would start generating time codes just like any particular, just like as if you're hand-holding the device. And this is from the late 1990s, so these sort of things have been around forever. Another good hack is people that it's called not required downgrade attacks, where you tell the system, Gmail or Office 365 or something like that, hey, I want you to require 2FA or multi-factor authentication. Well, in all of those cases, all those vendors will allow you to downgrade your authentication to something that's less than multi-factor, because they know that you're going to lose your multi-factor authentication device, you're going to lose your cell phone, you're going to have things reset. They all provide these, hey, these other things that you can do. So the attacker can tell the system, hey, I lost my MFA device. Can you send me an SMS code, or can you send me a reset code to my email account? So all of these, if the hacker can trick that provider, and many times when I say trick, they just do it through the web. They're like, oh, I don't have my MFA device. Can you send the reset code to my email account, my alternate email account, and they've compromised your alternate email account. They can take it over. What it kind of means, anytime you're allowed to do a downgrade of authentication, that means you're using the strongest authentication possible, but the hacker can easily reset you to something much less. Let me say I particularly hate these password reset recovery questions like what is your mother's maiden name or whatever to reset your account. Those are absolutely horrible. You should never, never use them. But that said, many times you can't get logged into a website without registering these crappy password reset questions. But you should try not to use them. Google did a research study in a paper that came out called Secret Lies in Account Recovery, Lessons from the Use of Personal Knowledge Questions. And what they learned is that 20% of the time, hackers can guess some people's recovery questions, 1 out of 5 times. 40% of the time, the legitimate people were unable to successfully recall their own recovery answers. And 16% of the time, the answers could be found in a person's social media profile. So hackers have oftentimes put people's accounts into recovery mode and then gone into, told it to go into the password reset recovery questions. They found the answers, and then they took over the account. So the way that you defend against this, you should never ever answer the questions with the real answers. You should treat them like they're password fields, and sadly that means you have to write them down somewhere, but you should never answer password reset recovery questions. So it says, what's your mother's maiden name? Dog, dog. What was your favorite car? Dog, dog. What was your favorite elementary school teacher? Dog, dog, and so on. I'm running out of minutes. Just got one last chance that I want to play here. Of course, we all know that if someone steals your biometrics, they can replay them. Let me get to one last thing here. Just know that all MFA has bugs. They're just buggy like every bit of other software, and sometimes those bugs are big, like the 2017 Roku vulnerability. This is a company called Infineon. They had a bug in the algorithm that generated RSA key links of 2048 bits or smaller. And what it turned out is that the bug was so bad that any user getting your public key, which supposedly anybody can see, could immediately figure out the private key. And this impacted hundreds of millions of devices, hundreds of millions of smart cards, TPM, Trusted Platform Module chips, YubiKeys, everything. And this bug is so huge that we're pretty sure that tens to hundreds of millions of devices are still impacted till they kind of, expire and edge on out, because most people still don't know about this bug. I mean, people that are in the smart card industry usually do, but that's a pretty big deal that one bug essentially invalidated protection of hundreds of millions of different types of unrelated devices, all because they shared a single type of bug. So that's pretty incredible here. I've got some other, other MFA attacks here, a total of 18. I encourage you to download this talk, and it's got all the information in there. We also, if I go to, let me head on up here. If you go to our to knowbefore.com/resources, there's a white paper there that's called How to Hack 2FA. I think it's 40 or 50 pages long that covers all this sort of stuff. I appreciate you putting up with me and my rushed potential here, but as we're running out of room, I have to make room for a couple of questions I've seen that have come on in. But if you have any questions that I did not answer today, please personally email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com. I promise I'll answer your question. With that, I can see that we have a couple of questions, high-priority questions in the queue. The first person asked, if 2FA is broken, what can we do then? Well, it's not that 2FA is broken. It's that all multi-factor authentication, all things can be hacked, including multi-factor authentication. So you want to always remember that just because you have 2FA, like a lot of people think, oh, if I have 2FA, I don't have to worry about phishing anymore. And as Kevin's video at the beginning of this talk showed you, I can send you a simple phishing email and still take over your account. And you and management and your end users have to be aware that you can still be hacked, and using MFA doesn't mean magically you don't have to worry about being hacked anymore. with that said, try to pick a good 2FA solution that, tries to fight some of these types of attacks, which leads into the next question. Somebody says, well, Roger, what is the best, two-factor, multi-factor solution then? There is no single best MFA solution. There are lots of good ones out there. Every single one of them is hackable. You can hack them all. The question is, or the trick is to try to find the one that works for you. No multi-factor authentication solution I've seen works in every scenario. Even in your own single corporate environment, you will never find a single multi-factor authentication solution that works across all your scenarios. So the best you can do is try to pick a good multi-factor authentication device or product or software that works across most of your critical scenarios that gives you a reasonable level of protection. And if they use two-way multi-factor authentication and they use multiple factors, the more power to it. The last question before we run out of time, somebody says, well, if two-factor can be hacked, what about three-factor or five-factor? Can they offset the problems that you mentioned here? And the answer is yes and no. First, remember, one of the key takeaways is that anything can be hacked. I don't care if you've got a 17-factor device, it can be hacked. But the more factors that you get, especially if they're different types of factors and they're added band to each other, the more protection that you get. I've seen some multi-factor authentication solutions that are super, super secure that have like 5 and 7 factors, some that even ask you to solve combinations of mathematical problems and color schemes on your screen, and as compared to a piece of paper that you're holding, a physical piece of paper that you're holding. And they make it tougher to hack, but at that point, I don't think there's any user that's going to use those. I don't think in a high security environment you're going to get somebody to use a 5 or 7 factor device that requires that they solve mathematical problems in color comparisons. I mean, at some point, you're literally making the authentication practice too tough. And so what I would say is pick some type of reasonable multi-factor authentication solution that gives you a reasonable level of security that works across most of your authentication scenarios where you need that type of protection. And more importantly, just remember that you have to include in your security awareness training that just because they have a multi-factor authentication device or solution doesn't mean that they won't hack. They still have to pay attention and be smart and be aware of things. And with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining me today for the last hour for the 12 ways to hack MFA. And again, if you have any questions, please forward them to me at rogerg@knowbefore.com. Be sure to download that white paper that's at knowbefore.com/resources. That's got all the information that's in this presentation and a whole lot more. Thanks to you all, and have a good day.
Thank you, Roger and Kevin, for an amazing presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us today for this fantastic webinar. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.